Well, joining me now from Westminster is the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Owen Smith, and the Conservative MP, Chris Philp, who is a member of the Treasury Select Committee. Thank you very much to both of you for coming on the programme. I'm going to ask you both the same question, but Chris Philp gets to answer it first. And the question is this. Haven't both of your governments, at various different turns, found it much easier to take money off people like Paul Rutherford, who we saw earlier in Fatima's piece, than off companies like Google? Chris, you first.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. And of course, there are savings in the welfare bill because we were spending far more on welfare than we can afford. We found those savings by introducing the welfare cap, so you can't earn more on benefits than you can in work, and by getting literally millions of people off welfare and back into work. Over 2 million new jobs have been created. So I think that's been a great success. On the Google tax point, the last Labour government completely failed to extract any tax out of Google, and it's great news that it's a Conservative government that's got the first 130 million. I've got a feeling that's only the first step. And we need to look at how
it's not really enough, is it? 130 million, let's be honest.
Well, look, I think it's a good start. It's 130 million pounds more than Labour ever managed, so it's a really good step in the right direction. And we now need to look at the way international corporation tax works to make sure they pay their fair share.
3% tax rate? Really? Seriously?
Well, I don't think it is 3%. I think it's 20% of their taxable profits. And the problem is they're using complicated international tax law to suppress the profits that are reportable in the UK. And the UK government has been at the forefront of work with the OECD to clamp down on this kind of abuse.
So, Owen Smith, as Chris Philp there said, it's 130 million pounds more than you ever taxed Google for when your party was in government. That is true, isn't it?
Yes, and I think the answer to your original question, Matt, is you're right. We have always found it incredibly difficult and increasingly difficult to get money out of large multinational corporations. They are incredibly expert and employ lots and lots of accountants and mathematicians to divert profits around the globe in order to diminish to the maximum.
It's not just about their clever accountant, it's also about your desire, any government's desire, be it Tory or Labour, to actually want to extract that money, and you haven't wanted to do it sufficiently in the past.
Well, I don't think that's true. I do think it is incredibly difficult to get at multinationals when they're employing the double Dutch or the double Irish or using the Cayman Islands or any of the other tax havens around the world in order to hide their profits. And I think the last shadow Labour opposition was very keen to try and get after some of this money. The Tories have made it much easier for them, of course. Tories came in and changed control foreign companies legislation and all sorts of other things.
All right,
I think it is...
Let me reply to that.
I'm going to ask you... We're going to move on to the bedroom tax now.
That's not true. That's not true.
Chris Philp, I'm going to ask you about
You did it in the first...
I'm going to ask you about the bedroom tax now, and this is my question on the bedroom tax. Would you not admit, Chris Philp, that the two cases that were ruled on today were simply wrong and possibly shameful? I mean, these people needed their rooms and they should not have been penalised for it financially.
Well, let's be clear. The vast majority of people who are disabled or who are caring or who are pensioners are quite rightly exempted from the removal of the spare room subsidy, which is what it is. It's not a tax, it's a subsidy. There are a very small number of cases who somehow slip through the cracks, and the two cases we saw today are two of those. And to cater for that, we've got a discretionary housing payment system which pays those people back. And in fact, the case of Mr Rutherford, the one we saw a few moments ago, he has actually been receiving discretionary payments. So he is in fact no worse off. And the discretionary payment system, £800 million over this Parliament, is designed to help people like Mr Rutherford, and it has been helping him. But where briefly, the exemptions don't quite cover everybody.
But you are appealing this case, and your insistence on appealing this case is causing Mr Rutherford, as we heard, even more nightmares.
Well, the reason it's being appealed, I think, is that the discretionary housing payments are designed to help people like Mr Rutherford who have fallen through the cracks. And in his case, he has been receiving the money. So although his spare room subsidy of £14 a week was taken away, he then got given that same amount of money back via the discretionary housing payment, leaving him no worse off. And that's why the government are appealing the case. And I think Owen Smith, in his comments earlier today, is trying to sort of demonise the entire system based on this very tiny number of cases who are, in any case, being looked after by discretionary housing payments.
OK, Owen Smith, isn't it the fact that under your government, housing benefits just went through the roof and something had to be done about them?
No, the Tories have paid £30 billion more in housing benefit under the last government than the last Labour government did. They've spent £1 trillion on welfare spending, more than any government has ever done before. The truth is, I want to pay tribute today to Paul and Susan Rutherford and Warren for the way in which they've gone about fighting this case. It is shameful that they've had to go to the courts. The courts have acted with decency in ruling the bedroom tax, in their case, as utterly unlawful.
Okay.
Chris is entirely wrong to say that there are just a handful of people in these circumstances.
Okay.
There are many thousands of disabled children
could
who are being discriminated
Okay.
against.
All right, we
and
could
they
go
really
on. I'm
need to
sorry.
act now.
We could go on, but we have to leave it here. You've both had your say. Lively stuff. Thank you very much indeed.